What's happening, everyone? My name is James Lynch, and this is the Fanatics View Hockey Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys have any questions, post them in the chat. I'll get to them as soon as I can. Sorry I'm a little late here today. I'm trying to figure out there's an issue with StreamYard, and it's not bringing up all my usual hockey stuff here for some reason. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, that's why my name is on the screen. I'm trying to get rid of that. A little bit later in the show, I'm going to be joined by Troy Noak. He is going to be joining us to talk fantasy hockey. We'll talk a little bit about what the main topic of today is, which is the New York Rangers. They are in dire need of a win. They are dire need of a big change here. Not looking so great the last few games. Let me just go look. I had a stat in here in the hockey tab. Let me just find it here. I think the Rangers right now are... Yeah, I don't have it lined up like I thought I would. But yeah, Rangers are not looking so great. And we'll even go look at the standings in a second here, but the Rangers not doing quite well, all things considered. They had a good start to the season, but now things are looking very grim. They got absolutely demolished by the New Jersey Devils the other night. And that put a lot of spotlight on, obviously, because they're rivals. And it's really, and I mean, we talked about this last week, but things have got even worse since the last time we spoke last week. So, last week I was kind of like, I don't think they'll panic. Now I think they will panic. I think there's got to be something they can do. So we'll get Troy's thoughts on that. But like we always do, let's start first with some of the action that took place last night in the NHL. We're going to start there first. And if you were betting last night, which I did, you probably lost a lot of money last night because a lot of these underdogs ended up coming through. We'll start first with the Montreal Canadiens. 2-1 winners over the New York Islanders last night. Big win there for Montreal. Islanders were, I believe, like minus 135 favorites. We had the Kraken stun the Carolina Hurricanes. That's surprising. Hurricanes were up early in this one. They were up 1-0. And then the Kraken getting 2 goals in the third period. Matty Beniers, 2 assists on the night. Of course, tough season for him last year. This year's looking like a different story. And then Joey Decord only having to make 17 saves on 19 shots. By the way, Joey Decord apparently eligible now for the Four Nations, but if you missed it yesterday, Canada did pick their roster. Decord not on that card, or not on that lineup, I should say. And we'll talk about that a little bit later with Troy once he joins us here too. You can see the Hurricanes, Kechnikov, probably butchering that. 4 goals on 28 shots. So that's kind of tough there. But you can see Martin Netsch's goal and an assist, which is always great for him. Some of the other action last night, the Avalanche beating the Sabres. The Avalanche were down 4-0 last night and came back. Man, Buffalo, you got to feel for those fans. It's been a tough season, and this was a game that they had on the, they had the Avs on the ropes, and Avs were able to come back and get it done. So you look at it there, Sabres scoring 4 times in the first period, and then the Avs scoring 4 in the third period. Avalanche triumphed the Sabres yesterday 5-4. The Bruins beating the Red Wings, no real takeaways there. The Penguins beating the Panthers. This is another big upset yesterday. The Panthers decently favored going into this one. They win 5-4. Pittsburgh getting back in the win column. You got the Sharks upsetting the Capitals in overtime as well. There was another upset. The Blues beating the Jets 4-1. We need to start talking about the Jets. I had this in my chat yesterday. The Jets right now have lost 4 in a row. They are 1-5 in their last 6. So what's going on in Winnipeg? They got to get it together. Although they had such a good cushion to start the season, not going to hurt them too much. This was a fun game. I watched most of this. The Canucks losing to the Minnesota Wild, but maybe one of the best games the Canucks have played this season. They really took it to Minnesota, who, as we know, one of the best teams in the league this year. Philip Gustafsson playing quite well. Overtime, it was close. It was. Brock Besser hits the post. It goes the other way. And who else? But, Kaprizov, I think it was Kaprizov who got the third period goal, or the OT goal, I should say. But this is a team that, looks very well balanced. Gustafsson, 32 shots, 30 saves. And on the other end, Kevin Lankinen playing quite well for the Canucks too. The good thing though, Elias Pettersson goal, or 2 assists, and Jake DeBrusk scoring as well. Jake DeBrusk, I believe, up to like 19 points on the season. He is looking his worth in free agency, and the Canucks 13-7-4, where the Wild are 17-4-4. So not too bad for the Canucks, who are missing some key pieces, including Filip Hronek, JT Miller, and Thatcher Demko. Just a couple more games I want to go over. Actually, I think there's like 2 more. The Jackets losing to the Flames. Obviously, a lot of emotion going into this one. Johnny Gaudreau being celebrated before the game, playing for both teams. Flames, though, blanked the Blue Jackets 3-0. I want to get Troy's thoughts on that. And then the Golden Knights beating the Oilers 1-0. I have had a lot of success this year betting against the Oilers, especially when their opponents are underdogs. So I got the Vegas Golden Knights, I think at like plus 130 yesterday on the money line. They blanked the Oilers 1-0. And the Oilers, 13-10-2. Not good. Not good at all. So they lose in regulation. The Knights scoring in the first period, and that's all they needed. Stuart Skinner just having to make, I mean, it wasn't really Skinner's fault last night, but again, not much on the Vegas offensive side here. Just 16 shots on net. On the other end, you've got Aiden Hill, playing quite well, stopping the puck there for the Golden Knights. Golden Knights improved to 16-7-3. The Oilers 13-10-2. Let's have a quick look at the standings right now. Looking here, I like to do the conference standings. So you see the Capitals still reigning supreme in the Eastern Conference despite that loss last night, 36 points, and they are tied with the New Jersey Devils, although they have games in hand, just playing 25 games compared to 28. And the Hurricanes right behind them, the Leafs, they've been on quite the roll lately. By the way, Leafs favored at home against Nashville tonight. Might be worth a stab. We'll talk to Troy about that too when he hops on here. And then you got the Panthers, Bruins. Bruins have been improving a little bit. They're now in 6th spot. The Rangers have dropped to 7, and you got the Flyers at 8th. How about the Lightning? 9th place right now. What's going on in Tampa? Penguins showing a little bit of life too, although they're in 10th place. And then you got the Jackets. Islanders have fallen a bit. Sabres have fallen a ton. And how about the Ottawa Senators? This was a team I thought that would make the playoffs. They are now second last in the Eastern Conference. Do have a game in hand on Montreal, but still only 1 point ahead. And yeah, that's where we're at right now with the Eastern Conference. And over in the West, we got the Wild taking the lead right now. Like I mentioned, Winnipeg struggles there. They are 38 points, first place. Are they first place overall? Yeah, they are first place overall. But, and yeah, they have the same amount of games played as the Capitals. So they are first overall. Jets in second, Knights in third, despite losing last night. Dallas lost the other night as well. They are at 32 points, fourth place. You got the Kings, Canucks, Flames, and Oilers. Oilers getting up to 8th place. Colorado still out of, not still, they've dropped a bit. They're in 9th place. You got the Blues, Kraken, and the Sharks, and Utah. They're all sort of low here. So, yeah. Utah's fallen a lot, but understandable with all their injuries. And look at the Predators, 20 points, 25 games played. Are they going to make a move? You'd have to think so too. So anyways, let's get to your questions. It's everything that's going on in the landscape. Might help to have more play without the puck from the defensive zone up ice. Depends what you're talking about. Who are you talking about? Got to be more specific here. Still in the playoff spot. East is wide open. Plus the play. Unless you're talking about you're talking about the Rangers. Obviously, my bad. Yeah. Have more play without the puck and defensive zone up ice. Yeah, the Rangers have got to switch something up here a little bit. So that's kind of where I'm looking at. And as Troy will, I'm sure, come on here and mention, there's just not a lot of players they can move around. Like, I don't know if they can even bring up anyone internally, but I think a trade is probably needed at this point before things spiral out of control too much. And you can't fire the coach, I don't think. How long has Laviolette been there? I'm even trying to remember. I feel like he's only been there for like a season or two. Just going to check that out right now. My memory's not serving me well. Where are we here? I think Drury probably needs to go, if we're being honest. So yeah, he's been with the Rangers. This is second season with them. So they're not going to fire Laviolette, I don't think, and I don't really think he's the issue. But trade could be happening. We'll see. What else do we got? As far as other questions, still in the playoff spot, Edith's wide open, stay the course and right the ship. Okay. I suppose that's fair. I guess just the way that it's part of it too is the way they're losing. And granted, New Jersey's, I just mentioned it there. They're at the top of the East right now. They're tied with Washington. It's still not good to lose that badly. That's, I think, the issue. If we go look at some of the Rangers games here. So if you look at the Rangers' last couple games here, they're losing to teams that just aren't performing very well. And you know who's going to help explain this a lot better than me? Our guy, Troy Noak, back here on the program. Troy, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Just got out of class. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us as usual. We're just discussing the Rangers' struggles. And, we talked about, on this show last week, we talked about the Rangers as well, but I feel like it was even more magnified with them losing 5-1 to the Rangers. And we know the Devils are a good team, but that's also a rival of the Rangers. Just your thoughts on the Rangers spiraling right now. They lose to the Devils. They did beat the Canadians, but just barely 4-3. The Flyers beat them. The Hurricanes beat them. It's been a tough go in Manhattan these days.
Yeah, so I think aside from the actual product on the ice, this is stemming from something down from the front office and within the organization. As you remember, over the offseason, they tried to get rid of Jacob Trouba, and all of the madness happened with his wife's doctor residency and his agent moving the teams on the no trade clause around. So obviously there was a message sent from Chris Drury that the leadership in this team moving forward. Obviously, the Rangers fans on social media, and I live in New York, as I know, all they did was complain about Jacob Trouba putting them in precarious situations all playoffs last year. I don't think he's a bad player, but the truth of the matter is he's overpaid. And they threw Chris Kreider's name into the mix last week, and the play for the team is dropped off from then. And I think it's really going to be a big problem moving these pieces because the majority of these players have no trade clauses. And the Rangers don't have any second-round picks for the next couple of years. And they really don't have a deep prospect pool. They have Gabe Perreault, who he should be really good, but the truth is he's undersized. Brendan Ottman, arguably their top prospect. And then I wouldn't really consider EJ Emery a very good prospect for them. I know at the combine he had insane stats in terms of jumping and athleticism that was off the charts, but how his game was described to me was he has obviously the potential to be a solid first-round pick player, but the athleticism is the massive upside for him, and there's big deficiencies in the decision-making of his game, and that's why they thought he would fall to the second round, but he ultimately didn't. So to get these players moved, they're gonna have to get these players to waive their no-trade clauses to get them out of there, and if they piss these players off, Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, enough, they might do it because there's been enough chaos going on in the front office for months now.
Yeah, and then we're just looking at the stats here right now. Obviously, Panarin leading the way right now for the team. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of just them not really syncing as a team, and something's got to give. And I was just saying before you hopped on here, and maybe you have a different opinion on this. Like, I don't think Laviolette's at any risk of getting let go because he was just brought on last season, right? So I think this is one of those rare situations where the easy thing to do is to fire the coach, like they did in Boston. But I think in this case, that's not really an option. And do you think, with that same note, do you think there's a possibility that Drury could get let go here if Dolan loses his patience?
Yeah, James Dolan. We know he's an owner that's not afraid to get involved with the teams that he owns, the New York Knicks, the Rangers. I think it's definitely on the table that Chris Drury gets fired because the way that he's handled this, I think is a little, dare I say, unprofessional, the way that he's going the media route instead of maybe keeping it in-house and not depreciating his assets' value by making a mess of it in the media. I think you're right. I think Peter Laviolette's most likely going to stay. And I think one other thing that people don't talk about is Panarin's contract is coming up soon, and he's 33 years old. Are you going to commit over $10 million to a player this old, although he's very good? I don't really think that's a fantastic move unless they do a short-term type of deal with him in terms of years. And like I said, there's not a lot of assets that are going to bring a ton of value back if you even do decide to get rid of them. So there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable questions being asked of the next general manager as soon as he comes in, because he's not going to have any emotional attachment to these players. And he might have to capitalize when these assets are at their highest, like even a Panarin, I would say.
Yeah, it's going to be a situation worth monitoring and keeping an eye on. Again, one of the better teams that had a good start, and now when you get streaks like this, this definitely puts a magnifying glass on things. So we'll see how they sort of navigate things forward. Let's get a couple questions, and then there's a bunch of other stuff I want to get into. We got some lineups announced yesterday for the Four Nations that I want to get your thoughts on. We can also talk some fantasy hockey as well. By the way, guys, Troy is the man when it comes to fantasy hockey. So if you guys have any questions, like if you're any players you're thinking about picking up on the waiver wire, or have any betting questions as well, Troy and I are more than happy to get into those as well. By the way, I checked the pool the other day. I haven't checked it in a while. Our pool, that is. Did you see who's in first place?
No, I haven't. I haven't checked in super recently because it's basically a best puck format, so it doesn't require too much maintenance.
No, it's so I don't check it. I mean, the beauty of our pool is you draft and you just leave it. You don't have to tinker with lineups. And you'll actually be pretty happy about this too. Let's have a look. We're going to pull it back a little bit. Look at that. Hold on. Oh, no, you can't see. Never mind. Let me zoom this in and let me share my screen. The suspense is killing you, I'm sure. Look at this. Who's in first and second right now? We're leading the way. So
there we go.
I know. I didn't even know. I just remember Brian having such a huge lead, and now you and I are 1 and 2. And I don't mind showing people. I mean, we're not going to go through all the lineups, but basically, for those who don't know, we're in a pool where basically you have to pick a player from every team, and you get points obviously for goals, assists. Goalies get points for wins as well. But yeah, it's kind of neck and neck right now. Like you're only a couple, 10 points around behind me. And then you look at last place, like there's a huge gap between 609 and 768. So you know who's been killing it for me, actually, two guys, Quinn Hughes, who's got me 35 points, and Martin Netchis, who's 52 points for me as well. Jack Eichel. And that's with Demko. Demko's got me no points this year. So when he comes back, hopefully I'll get a few there as well. Jake Wallman's also been playing well as of recent for San Jose. And on your side, got to point this out to people, Krill the Thrill. I mean, I saw it firsthand last night. That guy is looking like an MVP this season. So getting a lot of help from a lot of different players there. Just wanted to throw that in here. That has nothing to do with the show, but just wanted to talk about how, because actually Adam DM'd me yesterday from our pool, and he's like, hey, have you seen the pool lately? And I was like, oh, I haven't checked. And I was like, yeah, I'm in first. So anyways, I didn't rig the pool, just so people know. But let's get to, go ahead.
That draft was super fun. I was going to say, I remember the first team that I actually selected when I had the first pick was the Minnesota Wild. And I said, Kirill Kaprizov, in terms of point per game in our format, he's probably one of the best guys. And also, as you saw, the number 2 guy in my lineup, Dylan Strome. I mean, has there a bigger surprise in this season so far in fantasy hockey? This guy's averaging over a point. He was top 10 points in the NHL right now. And he's still doing this when Ovechkin's not playing, which is very impressive. And that's why I think the Capitals are a lot better than people anticipated. They barely look like they missed a step without Ovechkin.
Well, and you know what? I think that's something that does not get talked about enough. And again, we'll get to some questions here in a second, but like depth is so important, or, you know, having role players, guys that can step up. I'm seeing this firsthand with the Canucks. You got JT Miller out. They had Besser out before. Pettersson's playing his best hockey right now. And there's some school of thought that like maybe Pettersson plays better when there is no Miller because he's the guy and he's the, you know, silent assassin. You got Jake DeBrusk finally producing for the Canucks. Like, I think when you have P. Suter as well, who's I think like close to the team lead in points, which is just crazy to think about. I think depth is so important in having players that can, you know, sort of fill into that role when players are out. And you're seeing the teams when they are having significant injuries that they're not able to adjust. That's the teams that definitely need those types of players that can, you know, be sort of those X factors where you can use them in different roles. Like, you know, Suter's a good example for the Canucks where they like having him on the wing, but he can play center as well. Like if you have those Swiss Army knife type players that can play throughout the lineup, it is such a valuable asset on every team, right? And I think you're seeing that, you know, in Strome's case, I think he's probably like, look, I'm capable of this. Let me step up and go to the plate here. Don't you think that's, I mean, I personally think that's something that, you know, we look at like your Jake Getzels and some of these big signings in the off seasons, but these little like role players, I think play such a valuable role on certain teams.
Yeah, and like Dylan Strome, for example, I think he was either the 3rd or the 4th overall pick. This guy's got extremely high-end skill, and when he was on the Blackhawks last year, they didn't even give him his qualifying offer. He left for nothing, and he had almost 70 points last year, and clearly his skill set's playmaking. So if he's not paired with a winger that's going to shoot the puck like crazy, he's not going to be utilized to the best of his ability, and we're seeing on a line with the greatest goal scorer of all time, he's top 10 in the NHL in points because his best skill is playmaking.
Yeah. Let's get to some questions here. The crowd pop when Line A scored was awesome. Oh, that's from last night's game with Montreal and it was Columbus, right? Last night? Yeah.
Montreal versus the Islanders.
Oh, sorry, the Islanders. Yeah. Islanders. My bad. Yeah. Line A's back. I kind of forgot that he was back, Troy, to be honest. I just saw the highlights, but that's good for Montreal. They obviously needed him back for sure. So.
Yeah, so I actually stashed him in fantasy hockey on my injured reserve. On top of that,
Smart.
I also bet him to score yesterday at plus 235 versus the Islanders, who allow the second most shots on goal in the NHL. Any player with a shot that good shouldn't be plus 2 anything versus the Islanders to score a goal. And I think the Islanders are another team that are in desperate need of a shakeup. I know they don't have Anthony Duclair and Matt Barzal, but those aren't the players that make it tough to play against and limit shots being taken on your goalie. And as we've seen with the Rangers and also the Islanders, really good goaltenders can hide massive problems.
Yeah, absolutely true. What would you say what do the Islanders even do in this spot? Because do they have like picks or prospects that they can get rid of? Like I know that was one of the things in the Horvat trade. They had an Atu Ratu that they could give up, but I'm not sure what the pipeline's looking like. And I believe it's Bridgeport is their minor league team, right?
Yeah, so basically they have essentially no prospects. The best one, I believe, is Cole Iserman that they just believed. And he's actually a year younger than most people that were taken in his draft class. So he's only going to get better. And he had essentially one of the best shots in this past draft class. But last year was the first time the Islanders picked a first-round draft pick in, I think, 4 or 5 years. So clearly the prospect pool is absolutely depleted from when they were in the Eastern Conference Finals, losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning and not winning anything. But yeah, they're another team similarly to the Rangers where Lou Lamoriello is giving these guys no trade clauses, long-term contracts that aren't really appealing. The 2 big names coming up that are the upcoming free agents are Noah Dobson and Brock Nelson. And I think Islander fans know, a lot of my friends are Islanders fans. They've been complaining Noah Dobson is a complete defensive liability, as great as he is on the power play. There's so many situations where he's standing around, not being a proactive defender and really causing some big problems. He's honestly probably a third pair D-man in terms of defensive capability, but Lou Lamoriello truly made a mistake not selling high on him after his career season last year. And the other one's Brock Nelson, who he's a player I love. I think he's fantastic, but with Lou Lamoriello's history of giving players 7 and 8 year contracts, are you going to be happy if you give a 7 or 8 year contract to a 30-year-old player, no matter how good he is? Man, the Islanders are in a tough situation until that Anders Lee contract comes off the books. And even then, I don't even think that provides them enough cap flexibility to improve the team massively as well.
Yeah, they're a definition of a stuck in the middle team, and in this season, it's not even stuck in the middle. It's they're out of the playoffs, right? So they got to figure some things out with a lot of the cap restraints that they're going to be dealing with. A couple more questions, and we'll move on here. The Goudreau celebration was very well done. I didn't watch the whole thing. I was at the gym this morning. I saw kind of the vignettes and all that stuff, but. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's still weird. Like I was thinking about this today. I was working out and I was like, man, he's really gone. Like it's just, we've never really seen this. Like I remember, Canucks fans will remember this. Luc Bourdon was killed in a motorcycle accident. Top prospect for the Canucks. He was going to be like the future D-man. He was supposed to be like the Quinn Hughes back when there was no Quinn Hughes. And, he was killed, but we hadn't even seen him in really a lot of NHL games. With Goudreau, I mean, we're talking about one of the best players in the league. Like, I can't remember that happening in any sport recently where like a star player was just gone like that. It's pretty incredible. So, did you see any of the stuff last night or?
Yeah, there was some awesome pregame footage where they were interviewing his wife, where she actually got a tattoo of Johnny's signature on her wrist, like right across the street from the Saddle Dome, which I thought was completely awesome. They had Guy Gaudreau at the pregame skate. They honorarily had Johnny Gaudreau as the first star of the game, brought his dad out with Mikael Backlund and Rasmus Andersson. They brought him into the locker room after the game, gave him a round of applause. I thought it was awesome. I think keeping a guy of Johnny's dad around teams like that to keep him really positive is a good thing. We saw John Tortorella started the Blue Jackets, brought him in after the Flames did that. Like Dean Evison said, the day he met him, he just left training with his dad at the rink around the block from his house. So they're both rink rats, Dean Evison said. So I think it's really good for him and his family that he's around NHL level teams trying to get his mind off that stuff when they're celebrating his life.
We're going to switch gears here. Wow, I was way wrong in the Preds. We all were. I don't think anyone saw this coming with the Predators. And, I feel like there's so many other things going on in the league right now. Like I was just talking before you hopped on here, but Winnipeg's lost 4 in a row now. I mean, no reason to panic there. They have such a big cushion. You've got the Rangers. There's all these things going on in the league right now. I feel like we've almost forgot that Nashville is still not playing well. And still, I don't think there's any question. They're not going to make the playoffs at this point unless they go on some like Edmonton run last year, what Edmonton had, where they're like 20 straight, or maybe they need to schedule another U2 concert and see if they can go on a run here. But like, I don't know what they do, because even those contracts, like what's super appealing to other teams? Like, what do you think they're going to do in Nashville at this point? Because I guess I could fire Brunette, but he hasn't been there that long either.
First of all, I want everyone to apologize to Julien Brisebois, because everyone was ripping this guy a new asshole for not wanting
100%
to Steven Stamkos. And they're like, listen, like, you're lowballing him. That's disrespectful, XYZ. Months removed from this situation, we can all acknowledge that the Predators paid him as if he was a center. He's not a center. He's a winger, because of the toll that it takes on his body. So clearly he's being completely overpaid. And that's why Julien Brisebois was basically offering him half the amount of money AAV on his contract. And similarly to the New York Jets, for those of you who watch the NFL, adding a ton of veterans to a team that doesn't have insane young talent around them isn't going to work. You're just assembling a bunch of old guys together. And like, we all like completely look past that, because Philip Forsberg is a skilled enough player to drive a line by himself, but Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos don't have the foot speed anymore to drive lines by themselves. Their success was predicated on their last teams by players like Jack Eichel and Nikita Kucherov, skating around, setting up in the zone, cycling, and getting them the puck to be the ones to shoot. Not saying they're not skilled shooters, but if they don't have a player of that archetype setting them up consistently like that, they're not going to be utilized.
And you're just looking at the contracts here. I mean, you've got Ryan O'Reilly, he's 33, 4.5, Thomas Novak, 3.5. Nyquist will be off the books this year. You got Forsberg locked up. Like, I don't even know where do you even begin if you want to do something? And then I've heard people say, well, just get, Stamkos can go to a cup winner. Who can afford that contract? Like, you're going to have to eat at least half that salary. And is that something Nashville's willing to do? I doubt it. Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, even Brady Shea at, 7 for, however many more seasons, 4 more seasons may be appealing. But like, I don't even know how well he's playing this year. Like, where would you begin if you're the GM? Like, if you're trying to shake things up?
Well, talk about, before I get into this, I think number one, they did a very, very bad thing a couple weeks ago in terms of asset management. Former first round pick Dante Fabro, they put on waivers and was claimed by the Columbus Blue Jackets. He is a plus 14 for the Columbus Blue Jackets since joining the team with 3 goals, playing on the top line, top pairing with Zach Werenski, playing 22 plus minutes a night. As a 26-year-old upcoming free agent, where Don Waddell is going to, I'm going to call it right now. I'm calling my shot. He's going to give this guy Gustav Forsling-esque contract, and people are going to look back at this and say, why on earth did Nashville drop a 26-year-old right-handed defenseman that was drafted in the first round 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah. Well, from what I heard behind the scenes, because I was curious, like, was the Canucks even like calling in? I just heard that like his value was so low this season, like I guess just with the way he was playing or whatever, that teams were afraid to like pounce on that, and that's why they went the waivers route. I'm sure they would have loved to have gotten something, but I think also with the cap restraints and all that, it was easier to just do the waivers. But you're right, like they basically gave him away for nothing, and it's like that's not really the issue. The issue is, there's some other names on here that, like, what do you do with them? Like, even wonder, like, honestly, I was even thinking about this, like, even like a Luke Shen, like at 2 points, like Luke Shen, when he was playing with the Canucks, he was, I think, like league minimum or something a lot lower at 2.7. Like, as much as you want that veteran leadership, is that really worth the price? I mean, you're not getting the old Luke Shen, right? Like, I don't know what you do there. I think Carrier is the guy that could have some value, if anything. 3.7, 28, still relatively young. Right shot defenseman. I could see that being appealing to certain teams.
Yeah, and I also believe that Jeremy Lowe's on for that contract, and also considering that his contract is 2 years away from expiring, that's a guy that throws the body around and could be pretty reliable on a third pairing for a playoff level team that's looking to add some grit. And yeah, that Brady Shea contract is very scary with how much they gave him per year. Oh my goodness.
Well, and I think it's pretty evident, and credit again to Carolina. They're always playing 3D chess here. I think it just shows how good the system was in Carolina, because you're looking at Brady Shea on this team and you're looking at Brady Shea on Carolina. I mean, I know you were very high on him. I was as well, but I think part of it was the system he was playing in Carolina. It's not working here for whatever it is. It just doesn't, like, I think it is a systems issue where he was used to playing a certain way in Carolina, and now you're in Nashville and you can't do the things that you were hoping to do.
Yeah, certainly. The Carolina Hurricanes year after year are top 5 in least shots given up, and that's because their forwards are so defensively responsible that they don't allow that many clean shots to get through. And if they do, they have guys, used to have a guy like Brady Shea, and they still have Jacob Slavin cleaning up those shots in front of the net. And like you said, it clearly is a systems thing, because most people in the NHL gambling community love betting shots on goal against the Nashville Predators.
Yeah. Paul saying, when will they send Mika to the gulag? Zibanejad, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even look. Like, what's his his stats are pretty down this year. I don't even know how much so he's at 18 points, but he's minus 14. Jesus. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, and I sent you that graphic the other day with his
that's right.
percentile ranking, where Mika Zibanejad, 99% of forwards in the NHL are doing better defensive work than him, according to this graph right here. And he's 17th percentile in offensive production. And the claims that I have been making over the last year or two, that he is a power play merchant, which is offensive to people sometimes, but this guy can't buy a goal at 5-on-5. I mean, 2 games ago, there was a literal tap in on the right side of the net. The goalie didn't get over, and he hit the side of the net, and he didn't even have anyone back checking him. And this is a guy making $8.5 million a year for 6 more years or 5 more years. Like, and he's 30 plus. You're going to have to attach a first round draft pick to that and salary retention to get someone to even consider taking that contract.
Yeah. Chicago on line 1 or whatever, they're going to have to do something, right? So there's not many teams that, and that's, again, one of the things we always talk about in here. Cap space is such a luxury in the NHL. Who would you move from the Preds? I guess we kind of talked about it there. I think a guy like, I mean, look, if this season's done, you got to start the rebuild somehow. Like I said, I think Carrier is someone that could have some value. I don't know who else on Nashville would really. Is there anyone else that stands out besides him? Like that's got like well, you mentioned Jeremy Lauzon as well. Who, by the way, I think second in hits. You know who's first in hits this year? Do you know that?
First in hits
in the league.
You're bringing it up. He's on the Canucks, and I would guess his name's Kiefer Sherwood.
Yeah, you're exactly the guy they got rid of. So it's just that's it's funny. There's two. I think two of the biggest free agent signings, like in terms of like their contracts and the value. And this, forget the Canucks. The fact that I live in Vancouver and I'm a Canucks guy, but I mean, Kevin Lankinen and Kiefer Sherwood, how are those not two of the best contracts considering what they're being paid? Like even Eric Brandstrom, I looked this up the other day, is making more money than Kevin Lankinen. Like how crazy is that?
Yeah, and that's another thing, like especially in this cap era, if you don't have guys outperforming their AAV, it's nearly impossible to put a competent team on the ice. You see the Columbus Blue Jackets. The reason why they took the stab on Dante Fabro is because they have the most cap space in the NHL. And I think he's only making around $3 million a year. But to decently contending teams, they don't have $3 million a year to take a risk like that on a 26-year-old right-handed defenseman, Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, I would not be surprised if Waddell ends up, extending him. Because again, 26-year-old right shot defenseman, regardless of what he was doing before in Nashville, that's certainly appealing as well. What else? Let's get to a few more questions, then we'll move on here. Caps have Pierre-Luc Dubois, time bomb. What? I don't even know what Dubois is doing this season. Is he even producing? Like I haven't. Let's go have a look at the Capitals. I have no idea how he's doing.
He's pretty solid at even strength. He was playing on a line with Tom Wilson doing well, but I believe he's not on the top power play when everyone's healthy.
I mean, if he's not a liability, I suppose that's the silver lining here. Okay, so he's 16 points plus 2. It's okay, but. He could be producing more. By the way, Jacob Chikrin's right behind him, plus 10. What a pickup that's been for them. And they got him for nothing, basically, from Ottawa, right? So
yeah, and they are having him play on the top power play right now with Ovechkin out. And I have him in fantasy hockey. He's a player that, even without power play time consistently, is fantasy hockey relevant. And his status in terms of fantasy relevancy has went through the roof since Ovechkin's been injured. Because I think he's had multiple goals in the last 6 games that he's played. Couple other quick questions here. Rangers are thinner than people give them credit for. Well, I think the veil's being pulled away at this point. We're kind of seeing what they're really made of. Get rid of Zibanejad. How do you get rid of him though? Like who's gonna like you'd have to do like a Chicago thing where you got to give up a bunch of picks and dump the contract. That's the only way you can do it. Or they do the Canucks, which is you buy him out. Like the Canucks are going to be paying Oliver Ekman-Larsson until 2028 or something. It's something I think it's even further than that. So I think those are your only options if it's worth it. Sometimes it depends too on the cap relief you get on a buyout. Like I know for the Canucks last year, they didn't have, I think there was like barely any cap hit at all for OEL. This year, I think it's like up to like 4 point something that they're paying him, which is just insane to think about as far as what counts against on the cap. I want to double check that, but where's it here? Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Okay, so 2.3, so that's not too bad. Next year's 4.7. Damn it, that's a lot, man. And they've still got Mikheyev too, and Tucker Pullman that they bought out. So they're not the only team though. There's a lot of teams that are doing the buyout thing. I think isn't Shea Weber still being paid by Utah? I think or someone. I forget who it is. Yeah. So there's a few teams like that. Great coaches don't always make great GMs. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I hate to say it. It's kind of looking that way. Like, what move has Trotz made since he's been there that's been like a great move? Other than maybe like, I guess he would have been there when they signed O'Reilly, right? That was last season. I think he was like the assistant GM or protege. Right, and Poyle's still there. Yeah, okay. Season. But I hate to say it, but Barry Trotz is making very Lou Lamoriello-esque decisions in the front office. It's a great comparison. Great comparison. But he was the coach for that general manager. So if he was observing that front office work, that's the type of front office work he's going to try to emulate and deliver himself. Let's see. Okay, now did they announced the U.S. roster yesterday? I was trying to keep up on that, or is that still not officially? But I put out my predictions because. Okay, well let's get to your predictions right now. We'll bring up the tweet here. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see what you like, and then I'll talk about. Did you post on? Oh yeah, here we go. You got it right here. Look at this. Easy to find too. This is why you got to follow Troy on Twitter at NHLSOG guy.
So Connor, Matthews, and Matthew Tkachuk. Okay, I like that. Getzel, Eichel, Hughes. Yeah, Jack Hughes has to be on there. Brady Tkachuk, Larkin, and Boldy. Yeah, Trocheck, Miller, Thompson. I saw a list that didn't have Tage Thompson on there. Any idea why not? Just I guess because they feel more like they need more role guys. I don't know.
So there's two things that I was thinking of. I didn't see that before I made the list, but the one thing I could think of is Tage Thompson's been on and off injured a lot this season, and also last year he was dealing with a nagging injury. I think it was his hip or something like that. And like you said, I think it's very important to have players that can play within their role on this team, because at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are supremely talented, but you need guys like the Tkachuks, Trochecks, Millers, Larkins on this team to round out the roster, because you saw with Team Canada, they have Jarvis, Konechny, and Bennett as their identity line, quote unquote. And I think the U.S. having more players like that than any of the other teams in the tournament is going to bring them a ton of value.
Yeah. And then there's also thoughts on, I see you have Miller there in the third line. There's still some questions. That's a big talking point here in Vancouver. They're obviously going to be playing, the Canucks are back on their homestand here. We're hoping, a lot of people are hoping here, that Patrick Allvin will give a little bit of clarity as to what's going on with JT Miller, but I've heard from multiple people that he will be on Team USA. So, you'd hope that whatever is going on right now, that gets sorted out here pretty soon, because that tournament's coming up obviously in a few months. And then, I don't have any disagreements here on any of the picks. I guess with goaltending, like I'm trying to think of even who else they have, but yeah, Hellebuck, Ottinger, Swayman sort of, just on the surface makes sense. I don't really know who else I would imagine Team USA's got to be the favorite. I would think, like, who else do you see as a threat? Because I wouldn't put, like, Canada, just their goaltending alone will not put them in that conversation of one of the top teams, in my opinion.
My thing is, like, this is a really hot take. Like, I personally don't believe that the roster that Canada assembled is very balanced. Honestly, like I said, that third line of Bennett, Jarvis, or the fourth line, Bennett, Jarvis, and Konechny, I think is fantastic. But I think having players like the U.S. will most likely have in the Tkachuk brothers, Larkin, Trocheck, Miller, like, that's 5 or 6 guys that are really tough to play against. And honestly, like, I know Jake Gensel's not a big guy nor a fighter, but for what it's worth, that guy's scrappy and never backs down from anything. He's always in the middle of it, that guy.
Yeah, I would agree. We'll see how they, again, because it's you can't always put the best players on there. There has to be some role stuff as well for certain situations, so you got to be mindful of that. This is what TSN has as their projected roster. I've seen this list bounce around a lot, so I think this is the actual list, is my understanding. You got Reinhart, McDavid. Interesting, no Zach Hyman, but I mean, I don't think you can just bank on chemistry. Like, to me, you got to have the best of the best. And Hyman, I believe I haven't checked the stats, but I believe he's having a bit of an off year.
Very. Probably the biggest upset in terms of ADP in fantasy this year.
One I do have a question with, and I want to know your take on this. Seth Jarvis over Tavares. I kind of don't understand that one. I know Jarvis is obviously younger, but Tavares is having a hell of a season. Plus, you get that experience of, he's been around a while. Do you like that player? Or do you think they made the right move going with Jarvis over Tavares?
100%. I think they made the right move.
Okay.
Seth Jarvis, I think people that don't watch Carolina too much aren't entirely familiar with what he can do. He is a Western Hockey League, WHL young guy. He's got a ton of grit to his game. He's shown that he can play up the lineup with Svechnikov and Aho. He's directly linked to them in fantasy on the power play and line one deployment. And like I said before, he's not afraid to mix it up. He's not afraid to talk shit, and he's not afraid to get down and block shots and do those things. Like, I don't think it's highly probable that he doesn't get starting minutes, because Mark Stone, you can't entirely rely on him to be healthy the whole time. And like I said, if they're battling against a team like USA with the Tkachuk brothers, Larkins, and players of that ilk, they're going to need a guy like Seth Jarvis to get thrown up on the third line to get some more grit and sandpaper to give them a chance.
Looking at the defense, I love the first pair, Devin Taves and Cale Makar. I mean, they've already played in Colorado together. That and everything else just sort of drops off. Although I do like Josh Morency, but Colton Parayko was an interesting one for me too. You're seeing some comments here about Evan Bouchard. I mean, I personally would not have Evan Bouchard on there. He makes too many mistakes. I do wonder, if there were other options as opposed to him. There was someone yesterday I was thinking that should have got his spot instead.
I feel like
actually.
Dougie Hamilton and Tom Wilson.
Oh yeah, Dougie Hamilton. That was the name I was thinking of. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like both of those players should be on this team.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, I feel like you could move Jarvis up the lineup to where Hagel would be. And I honestly, because Dougie Hamilton's a right shot defenseman. Like, I know Alex Pietrangelo is very he's got a lot of trophies and hardware to his name, but the truth is he's towards the end of his career and he's in his 30s. And I feel like Dougie Hamilton, for what it's worth, is like 6'5", 6'6", gigantic right shot defenseman. I know he wouldn't be on the power play unit, but I feel like he'd probably be a better fit for the team. But they must be leaning on that Vegas chemistry. That's why they picked both of them.
Good point. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's actually a good point. And they took the goalies I wanted, so I'm happy about this. I'm glad no Stuart Skinner, and they put Montembeault in. You know, I'm Team Montembeault. I think having a young wild card goaltender is never a bad idea if shit hits the fan. Like, I just imagine a scenario, like, I don't know who's going to start. Personally, I would start Aiden Hill. I think he's played better. I think, this is a guy who more recently won a cup. I know Binnington has a better overall track record, but he played in the World Championships last year and had a couple blunders. Like, I don't know. And this is a guy who's a bit of a hothead too. I'm sure you've seen that, in certain games where this is a guy that will, lose his cool. So I would go Hill as the starter, but I just think, like, if Hill for some reason falters and then you got Binnington, like I said, losing his cool, Montembeault could be that wild card. And I brought this up, I don't know if it was with you or with someone else, like, last year with the Canucks, with Arthur Seelovs playing in net, like, it was almost this like dumb confidence where you're so young and so inexperienced, you don't even realize the magnitude of the situation. So you actually play well because it's just like, well, I wasn't even supposed to be here. I kind of feel like Montembeault could be that guy for Canada. Like, we've seen this time and time again throughout NHL history, even in tournaments where goalies go on heaters, like unknown goalies. Remember Andrew Hammond a couple of years ago with Ottawa? Like, there's just certain goalies that can do that. I feel like Montembeault is that like lightning rod. If things really go wrong, you can use him as that wild card. What do you think of that theory?
Yeah, I think that's a good theory. And I honestly, call me crazy, I know he's very old, and I just made fun of Alex Pietrangelo for being on this team being old. But why not throw Marc-Andre Fleury in there? Because he's such a great teammate and a veteran who's been there before. I'm not saying you'd have to really rely on him to actually be the number one goaltender, but I feel like in terms of experience and just what he can provide off the ice is just a classy veteran. I feel like
I agree.
He should be in there.
Yeah, I think the issue, like, I think he's played 4 games this year. Like, he really is on the tail end of his career. I think that's the only thing is, like, or would they even like get any use out of him? I think that's part of it. But certainly, maybe they can just bring him along for the trip as like a locker room guy, but no, don't actually like.
Because the truth is like the third goalie for any of these teams are probably not going to get one star.
Yeah, good point.
Like Jeremy Swayman's not going to touch the ice. Like, that's the like none of them, like Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger. Like, I don't even know who's going to start between them, but Jeremy Swayman's not sniffing the ice between those two. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. By the way, Ed Belfour, interviewed him last week. Got to give a quick plug to that because that's on this channel. He was all about the experienced goaltenders. He thinks Fleury should be on this team, so he agrees with you. So you and Eddie the Eagle share the same sentiment about having some more veterans on the Canadian team, which is great. We got about like 5-6 minutes left here on the show. I wanted to take a quick look at some of the action going on here tonight. Also, if there's any stuff you wanted to mention, Troy, obviously we love having you on here. Just a couple games on the docket here. A little bit of a tough one from a betting perspective, I think. But listen, I thought last night was a pretty obvious one with some of the games, and I was just saying before you hopped on here, I think all my bets, except for I actually bet Minnesota against Vancouver. That's the only one that cashed for me. Carolina lost, Winnipeg lost. Like, it was not a good night. But Bruins and Blackhawks, I mean, I really have a hard time seeing the Bruins lose even on the road. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, that screams a matchup that I don't want anything to do with.
Okay.
Gambling, because the Bruins went to overtime. They're going to be on a back-to-back. I know not many people think super highly of the Blackhawks, and players like David Pastrnak, there's no value on betting their props against a team this bad because they're so chalky. Although he's probably going to hit them, it's just not a risk I'm willing to take. Tyler Sagan's out for the year with a hip.
I saw that. Too bad, right? He had such a good start to the season.
Yeah, and this is a team whose top line is not performing well at all. Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson are not playing well. Those are another pair of players that are just completely letting down their ADP in terms of fantasy. Honestly, I wouldn't hate a stab at the LA Kings to win tonight.
I was thinking you'd probably go that way. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, again, when you have teams like this that are both, high level in the league, I always think it's worth. That's kind of like my reasoning last night with Vegas and Edmonton. It's like, well, Vegas isn't a bad team, and you're getting them at plus money at home, like. Might be worth a shot. So we're going there. I think the Maple Leafs, like, I'd be pretty shocked if the Maple Leafs lose to the Predators at home. It's a weekday game. They didn't play last night. I think they played a couple days ago. I mean, I think you're still getting them under 2-1 on the betting odds. Leafs are probably worth the stab here. What do you think?
What are the Leafs odds?
Let me check. Actually, we're gonna check out our friends from Bodog. Actually, they're my friends, but let's have a quick look here at the odds that they have the Leafs at right now. I saw them. I saw they were just slightly under 2-1. The line might have gone up a little bit. Yeah, they're minus 142. I don't think that's too bad, actually.
I don't think that's too bad. And I think another angle that would be good for this game is probably going for like a Matthew Nyes point, because he's back playing with the top dogs, and it's only a matter of time until the sports books catch on and realize I think he's maybe minus like 145 or something, a little chalky, but that number's going to get out of hand in the next coming games. And another guy that I just like betting no matter what the matchup is and what game, Cutter Gauthier over 2.5 shots on goal. That guy just has never seen a shot he doesn't like. Obviously, he doesn't get too much time on ice. He's probably getting about 14 or 15 minutes time on ice a game, but at the rate this guy shoots, it's worth a stab at plus money every night.
I also like the Knights here. And again, not too far a travel for them coming over from Edmonton. And obviously they played last night, but they only had 17 shots on Stuart Skinner. Like, they weren't that busy from the looks of it. I didn't watch the whole game. I just saw the highlights, but you're still getting them under 2-1 against Anaheim. This also kind of seems like a trap game too. Like, there's certain games where you're like, yeah, they should win, and then they lose, right? So Anaheim's one of those sneaky teams with their goaltending especially, right? So what do you think of that game?
Yeah, I really think Vegas should win, although they're on a back-to-back. Another player that I love for a goal or even shots on goal in this game is Pavel Dorofeyev. He's the main shooter on that power play. He's a guy I own in fantasy. He's consistently getting 2 or 3 shots every game. At the beginning of the season, he didn't have great ice time when Victor Olofsson was playing on the top line, and he played himself into getting on the top line and the top power play and being the trigger man. So he's another guy who I feel like is generally undervalued in the betting market. And if somehow he's on the waiver wire in your fantasy league, you got to pick him up, because you don't get Power Play 1 Vegas on the waiver wire too often.
Quickly before we get out of here, you're the man when it comes to shots on goal props, especially. We heard you drop a few here. Who are some go-to guys? Is there like any particular players on particular teams where you're like, okay, like I got to take a stab, and then it's been quite successful? Have you noticed any trends in that regard?
So first of all, I always like to target matchups primarily, because obviously, like, although you may be a fantastic shooter, if you're going up against the Carolina Hurricanes, you know what I'm saying. Like, I like going against the Islanders. I like going against teams like that specifically. So it obviously has to match up with like a couple components, but there are teams that are just insanely undervalued in the betting market. The Blue Jackets are top 10 in shots on goal and goals scored. Kirill Marchenko, I think he has 13 or 14 goals this season. This guy's firing the puck like crazy, right-handed shot, main shooter on the power play, top line with Sean Monahan, consistently 20 plus minutes a night. If you're an alternate shots on goal guy, you could take him for 1.5 shots on goal, like minus 350 for one of your legs in a parlay. And he's close to even money almost every night for 3 shots. I think that's a guy, just because of the market, and people aren't like jumping on betting the Columbus Blue Jackets unless they're pretty sharp. I think that's a guy that I look to consistently. Another guy I said before, Pavel Dorofeyev, crazy value on him just because he's not a household name. He's in a great situation on a great team. So he's a guy I look to a lot. And I think although he's a defenseman, Dougie Hamilton is one of the best guys to take for shots on goal, because when he gets the puck on the power play, he slings it. And the way that New Jersey played even strength, they really encourage their defensemen to shoot. And I think he's a fantastic guy in terms of actual attempt rates.
Troy, you're the best. Thanks again for doing this. We'll definitely get you back on here soon. I'm going to be away, I think, in a couple weeks too, because I'm doing going to do my road trip. Right, I'm going to Utah and to Vegas to go see those games out there in a few weeks. But in the meantime, actually, before we get out of here, I got to quickly mention this big game on Friday. I'm going to be going to see your Jackets play my Canucks. I'm actually going with most of my family, so it's going to be a good one on Friday. Looking forward to that game with Columbus. Do Columbus have any games in between there, or are they going straight into Vancouver?
I believe they are playing Winnipeg in between.
Okay, cool. So that'll be a good one. But yeah, anything you got coming up? Anything you want to plug? I know you got a new role as well. I don't know if you want to mention that, but I'll give you the last word.
Yeah. The first time I'll actually take advantage of this platform that you're giving me. But I think I'll say I just got an opportunity over at Sleeper Fantasy for the Premier League. I don't know how many of you guys actually watch the Premier League, but Sleeper's an app where they just started doing Fantasy Premier League. It's pretty popular for NFL and whatnot. You could follow them on Twitter or Instagram at Sleeper Footy, or you could get me where I'll be making some content at Sleeper_MCI on TikTok, and they'll be reposting that stuff on their main accounts on Instagram and Twitter for Sleeper Footy. So if you're Premier League aficionados like myself as well, hop on over there for some great waiver wire targets. I'll be dropping a video on Friday.
Perfect. All right, we are done. Thanks for tuning in. Waiting for this to end. There we go. Always awkward at that one little second where the red light doesn't go off. Oh, I know. I didn't click the end stream there. There we go.